Thank you so much for joining us here today on the first panel. Thank you for the kind introductions. So I know we've already been given quite a bit of accolades, all of us, but it would be great to start off with a quick round of personal introductions. So my name is Alnura Belyalova. I'm a director of PR at Luna PR. We are in the business of connecting tomorrow's technology with today's audiences. I have an incredible lineup of panelists with me today, but I would love to hear from them who they are and what they do. Pekka, maybe we start from you.
Thank you, Alnura. Yes, my name is Pekka Kelkka, also known as Papa Blockchain. I've been online since 1994, so I can consider myself as an OG in the online business. Last 8 years full-time on blockchain, crypto, Web3, different roles, but always strategy and business development in my heart, yes.
Amazing.
Good morning. Good to be here. Good turnout. So I'm Belal Jassoma. I'm the Director of Ecosystems at DMCC. DMCC is a leading international business district and Dubai's largest free zone with 24,000 companies and 87 towers. We're home to many sector-specific ecosystems, but most importantly, the Crypto Center, which is home to over 600 Web3 businesses, making us the largest concentration of Web3 companies in the region. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to be here. My name is Pranay, and I've been working with centralized exchanges for the past 5 years. I'm heading business development at EXOLO, which is a new age centralized exchange, mainly focused on Gen Z, and a lot of our focus is actually on education. So that's a brief about what I do. Thanks.
Amazing. Like I said, I have a great panelist with me today, so I think we're in for a great discussion. I'll start off with a very general question. I mean, I think we've recently all experienced the long-awaited fourth Bitcoin halving. There's been a lot of anticipation for it. I think a lot of people in the market are very happy for it. Pranay, I actually want to start with you. What do you think makes this cycle different? And is it any different? Are there any factors that we should be really looking forward to? Or maybe the opposite, things and factors that we should really watch out for this cycle?
So with all the halvings that we've seen a few things in common. That usually the price does spike up because of supply and demand as soon as you see that the amount of Bitcoin you can get when you mine drops. Because of supply and demand, you might just see something different. But this halving has been extremely unique because it hasn't been driven by retail. Usually you see Google Trends, Google Ads, all of them just spike up. Retail investors just flooding the field just because the price is getting so high. But this time it's been completely silent. It's mainly been institutions who have come in and changed the game. And this marks a really significant step for crypto as a whole, because with institutions stepping in, there are multiple things that they bring to the table. One being compliance. Most institutions, most of these big banks that we see who are now entering crypto, they have to be compliant. The other things that we see are that they usually hold everything for the longer term, or at least for longer term than retail traders. This also is different in this halving because the volatility that we're seeing this time is a lot lower than we've ever seen it. Usually when you see like a spike or new all-time highs being made, you see like a huge spike in VIX all over. So this time it's been extremely unique in that manner, that it's been driven by institutions, it's been driven by compliance, and it looks to be a lot more sustainable than it has been in the past.
Interesting. And just a quick follow-up question, because I know you've mentioned the wave of institutional involvement in the Web3. How do you think that balances out with the notion of decentralization in the Web3 and us now cheering on a very big wave of very centralized entities coming in? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
But this has to be the way forward. Otherwise, we can't just operate like we operate in the wild, wild west. With the market cap of the entire ecosystem growing, there has to be regulations in place. Because we can have these dreams about Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies being borderless, not respecting any boundaries and just transacting here and there. But you need compliance to come in, because you're also going to see loads of scams. We've seen multiple of them in the past, and we will continue to see them in the future, just mainly because it's such a young space, and there will be people taking advantage. So compliance and regulators stepping in and making it a more even playing field is essential, I think.
Amazing, thank you. And we'll come back to the question of regulation at some point in our discussion, because obviously it's a very important factor. I agree with you there. Apart from obviously a wave of institutional involvement, we've seen a lot of different trends in the Web3 space, right? And we've seen them usually come in waves and come in very strong, from play and earn kind of making all of the headlines to metaverse with Facebook becoming Meta, kind of taking over in the last, well, maybe a year or so ago. Belal, I actually want to ask you, what do you think are the next trends? Are we going to see much of the same? Is it going to be completely different?
This industry loves trends, doesn't it? So I think the overarching trend is that the entire industry is maturing, and we're seeing blockchain technology advance further to focus more on operational efficiency, scalability, and adopting users. And some of the technologies that you mentioned just now are having a stronger focus on their user-centric design in order to get more mainstream users. That being said, I mean, we're seeing this also in Web3 games, and at the Crypto Center, if you look at the wave of the Web3 games that are developed now compared to the ones 3 years ago, you can see a lot more simplicity and adaptability from the mainstream users. That being said, and back to your question about trends, the biggest trend that we see right now is the real-world assets. And we had the previous speakers of today also talk about it. At DMCC, we sit at the intersection of real-world assets, being the commodities trading hub and a technology hub with the Crypto Center. And we're not only seeing those use cases, but we're actually playing an active role in making them happen. And we've seen some good use cases take off the ground already, mainly in the tokenization of gold, and there are a lot more coming up in the pipeline. So for the next hype cycle, I would say keep a lookout on DeFi 2.0 and real-world assets. Any innovation in that space is definitely worth looking at, because if giants like BlackRock are diving in heads first at the real-world assets narrative, then it must be a big thing.
Definitely agree with you. Real-world assets has been the talk of the town for the last couple of months. The other question, and I guess it's a bit of a follow-up there, I think for a very long time in the Web3 world, we've been speaking about technology and how revolutionizing Bitcoin is for a lot of different use cases. But I think when you compare, the Web3 companies to the more traditional tech companies, the tech companies of the Web2 world are very adamant about the challenges and problems they're solving, and the technology almost comes in as a nice backdrop to how they're solving it. Whereas in the Web3, we're still very much, I think, proudly talking and highlighting how amazing the tech is, and many say that this is the reason why we haven't hit the mainstream yet, because, well, why should anyone care what is Bitcoin? No one really cares how email works, it just does. So, Belal, do you think we are at a point where the industry is going to start talking about solving real-world problems, or we're still very much too in love with the technology?
Look, I think it's both. So innovation and the underlying technology is vital, and we're going to continue to see that move forward. But at the same time, we're going to see some of the existing areas that you mentioned gain more traction and adopt more users. But I think the important thing here and the key driver is that to shift the mindset from innovating just to kind of, or develop technology just to innovate, and rather look at what technology is needed to solve real-world problems, and not basically, developing technology and then looking for a problem for the technology, but rather looking at problems and then finding solutions for the problems. And there are some really good opportunities that are being presented right now, and one good example is traceability and authenticity of real-world assets. And we have real examples. This is not just my opinion. Last week, DMCC hosted the Kimberley process intersessional meetings, and for those who don't know Kimberley process, it's basically an international scheme to regulate the trade of diamonds and the conflict-free diamonds. And on the sidelines of that event, we hosted an event on the technology, provenance, and traceability. And it had a full house, big turnout, lots of interest, both from the technology side and from the client side. And the technology of blockchain has dominated the discussion, because obviously it's the perfect solution for the traceability and authenticity. Since the blockchain is immutable, it presents a tamper-proof, basically, technology for things like that. And this is also supported by regulations that are coming up in Europe. So there is recently, I think 1 year ago, there was a regulation by the European Commission that will make the digital product passport mandatory in the coming few years. And with that in mind, blockchain technology is needed to create this important product that will be mandatory at some point. And we're already seeing big giants like the who are the LVMH and Gucci, who are actually using blockchain already for authenticating their products, and they're using it using blockchain, as I said. So with this technology in mind and with this opportunity there will be more use cases and more opportunities, basically.
No, amazing, and congratulations on the successful event. I think we're adding authenticity and the provenance of items to on the shelf with the real-world assets tokenizations in terms of the trends of blockchain use cases. I think overall, at least even what I'm sensing from this panel and when I talk to the peers in the industry, I think we're sensing an overall maturity in the industry. It's definitely not there yet, but I think we're all slowly growing there. I think there's more and more people that have been here for years, and finally I think we are at the point where we can welcome a much more larger mainstream crowd into the Web3 world, maybe without even them realizing that they are in the Web3 indeed. That brings me to kind of another part of our discussion, which is on the branding side. I think when you hear the word brand, you know, there's very obvious names that come to mind. There is the Apple, the Coca-Cola, Louis Vuitton, all these names that have become much more than just a company name, essentially. They bring certain feelings, they bring a culture, they bring ethos with them. And again, branding is what usually drives every other industry. The biggest and the best players are not the ones that may sometimes not have the best product, but they do have the most appealing brand that people can relate to. So Pekka, I have to ask you a hard question. Do we have Coca-Cola and Apple in Web3? And if we do, who are they?
I love hard questions. First of all, if you don't mind, I'd like to skip the beverage side of the answer. But definitely anything that relates to Apple, we have a lot to learn when it comes to decentralized solutions, DLT technology, cryptos, blockchain, and on our way to Web3. They have two fundamentals that we must follow. First is the quality. When early days, they're really good on quality, even they were not so big in the beginning. Microsoft was first on the personal computing, then Apple came a little bit. But what happens with iPhone, and I'm a little bit sad also what happens to iPhone, because I come from Finland and they kicked out Nokia from the markets because of the ease of use. So that's something that we need to understand. We'll never make it mainstream in Web3 application solutions platform if there's no ease of use. We need to have Web2 experience, ease of use, user experience, user interface. The same that we have on Web2, we need to have that on Web3 and on our way to Web3. And today, the only way to do it, we need to have hybrid model, because the technology, decentralized technology, is still too difficult to use as such. If you implement something on blockchain, you are immediately related to wallets. It's quite difficult to understand if you compare that to any Web2 application, for example. But we are getting there. There are technologies like account abstraction, which means that it's combination already easier to access to your crypto blockchain wallets, and also how you can cut, even you can have the mechanisms that your transactions are free on these account abstraction wallets. So, summarizing, yes, we have a lot to learn about Apple and other Web2 successful brands, ease of use and the quality.
Love that answer. Curious to also, though, have a quick follow-up there. Do you think there is a very distinctive difference between building a Web2 brand and a Web3 brand? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, again, it comes to the fundamental foundation, blockchain as a foundation of the technology. It is difficult to use. It's difficult to understand. But as you pointed out, Alnura, already, that we should not even care. If you're online, we should be online and get the benefit of what there is for us. But then again, the major difference is that this decentralization is changing the internet for us. And that's something that we need to have in our minds, that now the internet is owned by a few guys only, a few companies only. But blockchain is permissionless, is trustless, is borderless. Everybody can join these platforms, these services, these applications the way you want. No questions asked, permissionless. You don't have a boss, you don't have a company. You will have your role if you want. Still too difficult, but that's something that Web2 will never compete with us. That's the major difference. And I hope your programmers, if you are coders there in the audience, work hard to make the easier to access, easier to use application services and platforms.
I agree with you there. I think UI UX has been on top of mind for many years now in the industry, and with all the successful applications out there, it's the ones that you don't have to think too much to use that end up being the most successful. Well, we've been speaking a lot about different trends. I want to speak about one that is kind of resurrecting itself, maybe a bit unexpectedly so, social-fi. I think we've seen a lot of noise about it maybe a year or so ago. I think there was a lot of hope and anticipation that didn't necessarily work out the way that users expected it to. But I think now we are seeing more and more projects coming back into the space, maybe with stronger products, maybe with existing user bases, to come back and say, well, actually monetization of digital identity is a great solution, and we're here to show for it. There's two questions here for you, Pekka. Sorry to almost treat you like you're on an exam. But one is, why do you think we're seeing this coming back to life of social-fi? And two, is monetization really the only drive for innovation?
First of all, social-fi means social media on decentralized platforms, social finance. The finance part of the name is that there's financial solutions for everybody to get advantage of. And monetizing this, that's one thing that people think that this is something that's a key element. But the fact is that we, if you think the core was built on blockchain itself, it is independent from centralized systems. And that's also on social-fi, which means that if you are a user of social-fi, or you are publishing content on social-fi, you own this content. No Facebook, no other centralized entity own and monetize that. So it's two things. Monetization, of course, one very important thing, that you can start to monetize your content, whatever you produce there. But you control, you own, everything is there. There's no central entity that owns it. So you can do, it's pure clean ownership of the content and data on social-fi. And that's why it's very big. And there are big applications today already. I just learned very recently that there's XCAD, which is kind of trying to be YouTube on blockchain cryptos. And the one of the biggest early investors was Mr. Beast, the first YouTube billionaire. So we are going to this direction now, and I hope that you start to check those, understand them, use them, and still, when you access to any social-fi today, you access on Web 2. So you have this Web 2 experience, and if you want to go further away, connect your wallet, again, a little bit too difficult still today, but please spend some time, try to understand these opportunities that exist already today, and you're ready then when it's going to mainstream. It's not mainstream yet, but it will be quite soon.
Very interesting point there, Pekka. And actually, I'd love to throw a question to all of my panelists, because it's definitely an interesting point. We've got this incredible technology. Decentralized apps offer so much more than centralized can. There is a lot more power that stays with the customer and the user. Yet, it still seems to be very difficult to push the mainstream user towards using the apps. What do you think would be the one tipping point? And I'd love to hear maybe a different one from each panelist here today. Pranay, maybe we can start with you.
It'll probably have to be the network effect. When we just talk about people in social media, let's just take the Mr. Beast YouTube example all over again. The reason why he's making content on YouTube, and he's now switched over to X as well after Elon took over X, he has posted a few videos over there just trying to see what the monetization is all about. But when it comes to the apps that we have, most of them are still extremely niche and extremely small. And for some reason, our answers keep circling around. It is UI UX. For the average person who uses YouTube, accessing most of the apps that we build, unfortunately, are just not friendly enough. They aren't intuitive in that sense. It isn't really easy. And the number of creators that you have who try and consistently produce something is very, very low. Despite the fact that YouTube takes away a chunk of all their money, they still prefer YouTube because at least it's straightforward. With everything else, there are issues. So as long as we get to that tipping scale, that network effect really kicks in, till then, I think it's still going to be an uphill battle for us.
Definitely agree with you there. I think there's still a lot more proof that the Web3 will have to show to the more average user. Belal, is there anything you would want to add?
I agree. I mean, UI UX is always important, but specifically focus on the user onboarding and the kind of barrier to entry in terms of acquiring a wallet, integrating with wallets. The easier it is to onboard users, the better users are going to have and retention as well.
No, absolutely. I think I think all of us here take it quite a bit for granted. I think that's where maybe the difficulty is. The people who are building the applications are people that know the technology so well that for them, what seems intuitive might not be for the average user. But another, I guess, like a follow-up question on that, and I think, I know, Pranay, you mentioned it at the very beginning, the word scam is still very much associated with the Web3 and the crypto world, and I think sometimes very much deserved so, sometimes maybe not so much. What do you think, what would change this perception of the Web3 being almost synonymous to scams? I think when we talk to people outside of the crowd, outside of the industry, how can you prove to them that, no, we are all very good people here, actually? Pekka, if you wanted to give a go at that.
Yeah, of course. Well, if you think internet as such, scamming is quite usual there. So people are scamming each other. So it's like, if there's a chance to scam, you scam. But again, on decentralized platforms, application solutions, it's easier because you have direct access to the other party. There's no middleman in between, and there's no recovery of the scam in that sense, and it's totally hidden. But again, it goes to the heart of this need for the further development, and it's combining the off-chain data to on-chain data. And there's a huge development now, which is called, and that's the next big version of the internet, by the way, it's called verifiable internet, which means that some of the data comes from outside the chain, off-chain, and it's connected to the chain using, for example, Oracle technologies, and then it goes to on-chain and verifying there everything. So verifiable internet means that everything that there is on internet will be cryptographically verified. It's a little bit technical word, but it means that it's the decentralized mechanisms, most advanced computer code. We don't need to care about it, but it exists there, and it's verifying you as a user, your tokens, your coins, your wallets, your transactions will be cryptographically verified. Technology is there today. Again, it's not easy enough to use yet, but the fundamentals are there, the foundation is there. And now it's just a little, one layer on top of which is the ease of use on everything. And that's the solution. That will be the next internet, which is called verifiable internet.
Looking forward to that. That's quite interesting. The other question that I have is, again, because we've spoken about onboarding the mainstream user, we've spoken about the industry becoming more and more mature. I think Web3 at its core has always been about, being peer-to-peer, being decentralized, bringing the power to each individual user, foregoing any sort of centralized intermediaries. Do you think today, with the industry as it is now, are we still going to reach that almost utopian, blissful stage where technology and the way, not just technology, but the way that we live can be truly decentralized? Or are we going to find ourselves in a very comfortable Web 2.5 position and kind of stay there for a while longer? Belal, if you wanted to touch on that.
No, look, it's only going to push forward. And if I like to talk numbers in general, and according to a report that we recently published at DMCC, which is a future of trade crypto edition, the metaverse is expected to reach 3.4 trillion by 2030, and the DeFi is expected to grow 44x to reach 600 billion by 2032. And that's not going to happen by just staying in the Web 2.5.
That's really true. Numbers speak louder than words. Pranay, anything there that you'd want to add?
Despite the growth that we do currently experience, that we have been seeing for a few years, I think we have reached a point where complete decentralization does seem like a bit of a utopia. There are stepping stones to get to that point, and what the entire industry is understanding a bit by bit is the fact that you'll have to walk hands in hands with the governments, with multiple partners, and yes, what you can actually do is improve them and ensure the core ethos of transparency and security is still there with every transaction that we make or any app that we build. So I think transparency will be the key. That because the blockchain, everybody can see exactly what's happening. And these are some of the core tenets which we can just randomly apply to everyday life.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. And you've led me very nicely to my next question, which I've promised everyone we're going to touch upon, which is regulation. I think it's something that no Web3 discussion can really go without these days. I think in the past year, the buzzword when it comes to regulation has been regulatory clarity. And it has always been about which jurisdiction is going to be able to be more clear about what rules they are trying to impose. I mean, we are all currently, some of us are based on, we're traveling here to UAE, and I think that's not a coincidence. The country has been incredibly strong at proving that regulatory clarity can exist with Web3, and it can exist with a balance of fostering innovation, but at the same time, keeping the end customer safe. So now that the regulatory clarity is something that I think a lot of companies maybe now got used to, what is going to be the next maybe goal, maybe the next buzzword when it comes to regulation? Pranay, if you want to.
Yeah, so regulation, as you rightly said, has been the entire buzzword of the season. With institutions coming in, they walk hand in hand with regulation. Earlier, most of us had this dream that the entire world would just come together in a summit or a forum, and we would make a unified set of laws for the entire space, and that's how we would be governed, that we would just have our own words, and through a DAO or something of that sort, we can just make something like that happen. But now what you're realizing is that there are different countries with their own laws, with their own jurisdictions, and it'll have to be a bit like a patchwork. I think one of the best regulations that we have right now is probably in Europe with MICA. The clarity that they have when it comes to virtual assets is, and this was back last year in about June or something. And now what you're seeing is over the past 6 years, even the SEC, despite the fact that they're still going after loads of people who are running centralized exchanges, but some regulatory improvements have been seen, even in that region. So you will eventually end up having multiple large jurisdictions and regulations in different areas, and then the countries themselves coming together to form like one patchwork quilt. And of course, in all these discussions, countries like the UAE, especially Dubai, with the rules that they have, Singapore being another one, and Hong Kong recently joining the game as well. They've recently launched Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs at the same time. So despite being dormant for a very long time, you do see the sudden rise of governments now really wanting to take part in the entire landscape, ensuring compliance is perfect. And I think this patchwork sort of area is probably the way forward.
That's very interesting. Thank you so much for your insight there, Pranay. And just because you mentioned something, I'm happy to throw the question at anyone in the panel who would want to take it. It is true, Hong Kong launched their Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs right after the long-awaited Bitcoin ETF has become live across the United States. What's been interesting, though, is looking at the numbers. Obviously, the actual volume of trades in the US has been gazillion times more than that of Hong Kong. Despite the fact that US continues to be very strenuous and seems to be a very difficult jurisdiction to exist as a Web3 company, it still seems to be a very much lucrative market with a lot of interest for Web3. How do these two balance out? We have users and people that are keen and interested in the technology, but then the regulator that is not allowing it to survive. Where do you see that kind of fight end up? Happy to throw anyone.
Can I start? I'm closer to you. First of all, we need to understand this product, which is exchange-traded fund, and it is security. And you can wrap this security, and inside it can be something else that is not security. And looking at from that perspective, Bitcoin is not licensed and regulated anywhere. It's the ETF product. Inside the ETF product, there is a commodity, which is Bitcoin in US. I just learned again very recently, it is a little bit alarming, that in US exchange-traded fund application and how they were accepted and pulled through, there is a 2 days up to 30 days settlement time to get the actual Bitcoin for the supplier. which means that they can sell the Bitcoin now without having Bitcoin. And that's really dangerous. If you're talking BlackRock and these guys, they certainly can manipulate so much markets during 1 month time. And this is different when it comes to Hong Kong. This supplier needs to own the Bitcoins one-to-one that they are selling. There's no settlement, the immediate settlement on the transaction. And that's something that, let's see how this will turn out to be, but that's really, really important to understand. First of all, Bitcoin as a product, commodity product in US, it's wrapped with the security product, and that's why these institutional investors can buy it. But again, we need big money to join us, as Pranay already mentioned in the beginning. So it's good that big money is coming in because we'll follow what big money is doing, but we need to understand reality also, what we have in here.
That's very interesting. I didn't know about the settlement differences in different jurisdictions. Thank you so much, Pekka, for that. We are coming a little bit closer to the end of our discussion. I think we've gone through trends and mainstream adoption and the state of regulation. I'd love for each and every panelist to maybe, if there was anything that the audience here today had to take away from the discussion, what would it be? Maybe we'll start from the other corner now. Pranay.
I think Belal mentioned this earlier on in his answer when he talked about RWAs and the way they're really changing almost everything that we're doing right now. You have RWAs from wines to, from right to the point where grapes are being grown, all the way to wine in the bottle. You have RWAs when it comes to mines. So entire mines are now being tokenized and digitized to what we've seen in the past already, like real estate and luxury goods and even art. So RWA should continue to be like a main theme inside the Web3 space. But overall, for the entire ecosystem to really grow, which is what we want this year to be, we'll need regulation and compliance and continue having discussions on these same two topics again and again and again. That would be my key takeaway. We need institutional money. It leads to less volatility, more long-term holdings, and that is the way forward. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Regulation and more institutional money. Belal, what are your thoughts?
Sure. So I have 2 points as well. So first, on the regulations, you talked about regulatory clarity, but I think what's equally important also is regulatory stability. And the UAE is a very stable country politically and economically, and once a direction is set on the top, and we move forward. Basically, we don't move backward or sideways. And we've seen some jurisdictions, unfortunately, that they kind of push forward on crypto and regulations and pull back a little bit, and this hasn't happened here. And we've only seen the regulators in Dubai move faster, and we're seeing speed and efficiency at issuing licenses, especially at the crypto center. So that's a good thing, and that's encouraging, I think, for international investors looking at where they want to start. But in addition to that, Dubai is the ideal launchpad for crypto companies, and especially places like DMCC, where we provide a complete support. We have a dedicated team who's only focused on supporting their Web3 businesses. The team is led by Zahir, by the way, who's sitting in front. So if you want to talk to him afterwards.
All of the commercial inquiries for DMCC that way.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Belal. I mean, regulation and,
an ecosystem.
And ecosystem building. Pekka, what are your thoughts?
Let me refer a little bit what Pranay said in the beginning about the network effect. As we know how big Google is today, and they had one major thing based on their strategy was based on one major thing from the beginning. Network effect. That's why they started to give free emails, Google Earth, all these big applications for free. They wanted to build a big ecosystem, big community, a network effect. The biggest networks will take over the smaller networks. And that's something that is also happening on the Web3 and Web 2.5, I'd say. For example, there is one platform that's kind of sneaking up to the list and scales and everything. It's on the chart. It's a chart now, 10th biggest, I believe. And it's called the Open Network, TON. Their ecosystem, it's based on the Telegram, which is the third biggest social media application with almost, listen carefully, 1 billion users, 1 billion subscribers. And these guys who are now using Telegram, they have direct access to TON wallet, and applications are coming big time. All kinds of gaming, DeFi, all kinds you can imagine are coming big time. Tens per day, hundreds per month on TON ecosystem, because they have access to almost 1 billion subscriber base. So network effect definitely is something that we need to understand. Big thing also when it comes to developing Web 2.5 and Web 3 applications.
Thank you so much. Network effect and mainstream adoption. If I can add 2 cents from my end, I think I'm still very much looking forward to seeing that one, the iPhone moment of Web3, the moment when, or the email moment, as many people say it, a project or a product or an app, whatever it might be, software or hardware, that is going to run seamlessly on blockchain without people realizing that it is. But we'll have to see what it's going to be. Thank you so much, everyone here today, for joining us. Thank you so much, dear panelists, for your insights today.